a book, Better Than Okay, Finding Joy as a Special Needs Parent, and I'm the founder of Accepting the Gift, a ministry for Catholic special needs parents. I'm a wife to my husband, Tony, for the last 22 years. We have 5 wonderful kids. My youngest 2 have a degenerative neuromuscular disorder known as spinal muscular atrophy. So they require assistance to do everything physically. They use power wheelchairs to get around. But mentally, they are like your typical 13 and 15-year-old boys. So they're always keeping me on my toes and giving me that teen attitude, just like, any other teens would. But that's really what brought me into this sphere, is becoming their mother and a better mother through parenting and caregiving them. My journey kind of started as a Catholic mommy blogger back in 2012. And as I started sharing more of my family's life online, especially about what it was like to be a parent to my youngest 2 sons, I started getting a lot of emails from other parents whose children had a wide variety of diagnoses. And they were reaching out to me just as this random blogger because I was the only other Catholic special needs parent that they knew. They didn't see any other children like their children in their parishes, and they didn't know any other parents that were going through the struggles that they had. And I couldn't believe this. I didn't feel qualified as a blogger who was struggling with my own issues spiritually to come to terms with my son's diagnosis to kind of be their go-to. But, as I grew, I was sending out responses to these people, and it was the same things over and over. And so then that's why I wrote the book, which I wanted to just briefly share. If I can click over and share my screen. So I wrote the book because I was, again, sending the same email out to parents over and over again with the same answers to their questions. And, when you write a book and your publisher's like, well, you got to go out, you got to promote it. So I was looking for conferences. Where could I promote my book? And I couldn't find really a lot out there for Catholic special needs parents. And so I started a conference, Accepting the Gift, and then that conference became the ministry that I have today. And I'm so blessed to be able to now connect with so many parents across the country through our Facebook group and through what we're doing, and just learn from so many other parents, and then also learn from a lot of other lay leaders in parishes, DREs, pastors, what's happening. There's some really great things going on, but unfortunately it's not across the board. So, stop sharing that. It's not across the board. And so that's what my talk is about today, is how we can kind of work together as parents and lay leaders to really create, a more accessible and welcoming parish. So what does the church really teach about, welcoming disabled people? Oh, and before I forget also, if you do have any questions or comments, just drop them in the chat. Just go to the bottom, click on those 3 buttons, open up chat, and then leave your comments, questions as I go. And then at the end, I will answer them. If you're a parent at a parish that's doing really well, doing really great work, supporting you, share a story. If you work at a parish that's doing great things for special needs families, for disabled Catholics, leave some of your things in the chat. I'll read those aloud as well, so they get caught in the recording. So people that watch this later can kind of hear some of those things as well. I wish we could be all there together in person. I love talking in person and really hearing what's going on around the country in this sphere. So what does the church really teach about welcoming disabled members? And then what is the reality? What am I hearing? What am I seeing? What are you seeing as parents and as people working in the parishes? Well, United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, it is essential that all forms of the liturgy be completely accessible to persons with disabilities, since these forms are the essence of the spiritual tie that binds the Christian community together. To exclude members of the parish from these celebrations of the life of the church, even by passive omission, is to deny the reality of that community. Accessibility involves far more than physical alterations to parish buildings. Realistic provision must be made for Catholics with disabilities to participate fully in the Eucharist and other liturgical celebrations. Yes, exactly, right. And Pope Francis, He's had some wonderful speeches, addresses that he's given on the International Day of Persons with Disabilities, which I believe is December 3rd. So some of his comments. As far as the church's life is concerned, the worst form of discrimination is the lack of spiritual care. Sometimes, as certain of you have unfortunately experienced, this has taken the form of denying access to the sacraments. The church's magisterium is very clear in this area, and recently the Directory for Catechesis stated explicitly that no one can deny the sacraments to persons with disabilities. So the church is very clear. Children with disabilities, adults with disabilities, we are welcomed and wanted at parishes, and we are welcome to receive the sacraments. Despite this, I know that many, many parents are struggling, and that is not their reality where they live. You know, and we have so much as a church to gain by making sure all of our members are able to come together and be involved. You know, and if we don't work together as parents and lay leaders, the alternative is that families like mine are just going to leave and we're not going to come back. Really, all it can take for a lot of special needs families is one bad experience. And I think a lot of people that aren't special needs parents or don't know special needs parents, they may hear that and think that's just like complete overreacting. Like, why would one bad experience keep you from ever going to mass again, keep you from bringing your child? But when you are already stretched so thin, mentally, financially, physically, going to mass can be a real challenge, and it can take every ounce of strength you have to get everyone out the door, you know, and just get there as close to start time as possible. So when you get there and there's physical barriers, if I can't get my boys' wheelchairs anywhere in the building easily, if you get rude comments, you know, or if you're excluded or told to take your child outside because they're being too loud, that could very well be the straw that breaks the camel's back. So when you think, oh, why would any family just leave after a bad experience? Oh, what's the bit, you know, it really, that's what it comes down to. And I've heard way too many stories of parents that they had a bad day and that was it. That's when they made their break. So, you know, it's worth the effort, and it's worth working together to really improve our churches. In some statistics that I share in my book and that cite all the relevant sources, almost 1/3 of special needs parents surveyed in a 2010 study of 400 special needs families said they left at least one church because their child was not included or welcomed. A 2014 study found that people with disabilities are less likely to attend worship services and other church activities than non-disabled people. And a 2013 study found that more than half of the surveyed special needs parents reported that their child with a disability had been excluded at church. And then in one Facebook group that I'm a member of, Catholic Special Needs Parents, someone just asked the question, you know, does anyone in your family find Mass too difficult to attend due to what's being labeled, you know, as special needs? 80 parents responded, 42% said at least one family member can't attend Mass. And 22% said at least one family member has difficulties, but they go and make the best of it. So only 26% that responded said they had no issue. And I think also it's important to note that many people, special needs parents, their marriages are struggling. And, you know, you'll hear some really bad statistics on how likely it is that you can get divorced if you have a child with disabilities. I mean, it really depends on a lot of different factors, but there is a tendency, if you're a special needs parent, your marriage is at risk. So chances are you've also, not only do you have at your parish probably special needs parents, but you probably have parents that are struggling in their marriage in that part of their vocation as well, or you have single parents. I've seen this personally at a parish, you know, with very dedicated people and very good Catholic families, and, you know, they couldn't survive some of this, you know, things that came along with their child's diagnosis. So you've got all these people coming to your church service with a lot of things going on. And so this is why, again, it's so important to work on these things. You know, I was blind to so much of this myself as a special needs parent. My family, we are so blessed at our church. Our church has really done and made so many accommodations for my sons in religious education, sacramental prep. and removing barriers, physical barriers, to make it easier for them to use their wheelchairs. But again, once I started getting all these emails, once I started my conference and my ministry, that's when I realized what the struggles were. And these are struggles, that they're having on Sundays on top of all the struggles that we as special needs parents face. If you're a parent out there, all the additional burden that you carry, to then have to take on all the problems on Sunday. It's no wonder that so many parents just don't go, or they stop going. So this is what motivates me to speak to parents and church leaders about this. If we don't put in the work, we're literally losing souls. And so that's how I like to frame the conversation. This isn't about raising money for a ramp. This isn't about just, training teachers to work with kids with disabilities in the classroom. We're saving souls. There is eternal consequences here. So, if somebody puts up barriers like, oh, I don't want to, it sounds expensive. It sounds expensive. That's always the excuse, right? They don't have money for these things. It's for souls, your child's souls, your souls, family souls. And I found when we put that work in, we're going to get rewarded twofold. So what are then the benefits of a more inclusive church? Besides what I just said, you're saving these souls. What are the benefits? Well, for parents like me, it means our children are receiving the sacraments. They're getting religious education, and they're participating in youth activities with their peers. They can attend mass and parish events regardless of whatever mobility device or diagnosis, and they can find a seat. We know that people aren't going to stare, treat us rudely, make comments. We can participate and we can volunteer because our children are welcome to tag along, or there might even be people offering to help watch them. And when our child is sick, hospitalized, we know our parish is going to support us spiritually, and possibly even through things like meals, home visits, and fundraisers. And this is not some weird far out goal. You know what I mean? This should be a pipe dream for parents. This should sort of be the norm. It's the norm for my family. It's the norm for a lot of families that I know, but unfortunately, it's not the norm for every family at every parish. So then what is the benefit to the parish and the parishioners there? They tend to think, oh, well, what do we have to do for these people? What money do we have to spend to make accommodations for disabled Catholics? You think of all the money and the resources you have to put into it. But you fail to see that when you do these things, families like mine and my sons, we have just as many gifts and talents to give back as anyone else at the parish. When you put these things in place, when you make accommodations, when you're welcoming, you're now getting all the gifts and talents of those people that are going to contribute. So you're gaining all those things that you would get with any new family coming in. And it allows, then my faith can grow. And you keep giving back, it's so beneficial to the parish as well. And I think also what people don't realize is when you welcome disabled people, you're going to also break down some of the harmful stereotypes that other parishioners may have about people with disabilities. An inaccessible parish, it sends the message that disabled people aren't welcome. We don't need to bother with them. And trust me, that's the message that we pick up when we travel and we can't, get into a church or we can't get into somewhere. Well, we know our family's not welcome here. This building, this institution, this church, we don't matter to them. We're not worth their effort. So that's the message you're sending to parents and to children and to disabled Catholics. But then that's also the message you're sending to your other parishioners. You don't need to worry about these people. We don't need to worry about that. And it separates, you know what I mean? So then your parishioners, they never have any contact with people with disabilities in the context of church. And that's ridiculous because it runs contrary to what we just heard about church teachings and just the whole gospel message. So when you are an accessible parish, when you're a welcoming parish, you're spreading the message that, people with disabilities, children with disabilities, they matter. And they're worth the time and they're worth the effort. And then that's what the parishioners will pick up on as well. We know that we are loved and valued and important members of our parish. And again, that should be standard. This shouldn't be some weird thing that only applies to us. That should be the standard for all people with disabilities, children with disabilities. So then what are like the steps, what are the things that we can do? How do we work together to make this happen? So parents, if you're at a parish that is not particularly welcoming, unfortunately, it's probably going to fall on you to reach out and speak up. And I know that it just doesn't seem fair. You've already got so much going on. Why do you have to also be the one that takes care of this? Shouldn't the church just already know and already be there for you? It's just how it is. Unfortunately, it's not there yet everywhere. Maybe you're not really in a place to spearhead some major effort, and I get that. So the most basic thing that I recommend for any family that has a child with disabilities, just start working on building a relationship with your religious education department, the DRE, the teachers, and your parish priest. Get to know them, build a relationship. We have a wonderful guide. And I will share my screen again to show it. We have a wonderful guide that we created just for this purpose, to help parents who maybe don't know how to build that relationship. They don't know how to approach. So if you go to our website, go to our shop, you'll see the Family Advocacy Toolkit. And in this toolkit, we will give you all the forms, everything you need to approach your pastor, approach your DRE, and start building that relationship. Because really that's crucial. That's really key to start there, because surprise, they don't like it when you just show up the year that you want your child to make their first Holy Communion and start asking for accommodations. They tend to frown upon that. So work on at least building that relationship if you can't spearhead something greater right now. And again, this is exactly why then parish leaders need to be proactive, because you might have struggling parents who don't know how to advocate. They haven't found our free guide yet, or they're exhausted and they haven't reached out for help, or worse, which is still so common, unfortunately, they think they can't reach out. They've been misinformed by another parish or other people, other Catholics. They don't think they can reach out. An example of this is we had a mother with a daughter who had various disabilities, and she joined our Facebook group, followed our website and everything, got connected with us and our resources. She had no idea that she could even ask for her daughter to receive the sacraments. She believed that because her daughter had these disabilities that she could not receive First Holy Communion or First Penance. And no one in the parish had ever approached her. No one had ever, said, hey, we haven't noticed your child in CCD, she's welcome to join. She got our resources and she approached the religious education department and her pastor, and they were like, yeah, sure, let's do it. Let's see what we need to do. And last spring, her daughter received her sacraments. So that's why, I do this, and why I think this is so important, because literally, it's souls and it's kids that are not getting sacraments. And it's just, in some cases, parents just don't know. So that's why it helps to be a proactive parish. So then you need to be proactive as you're starting this process. Look around your parish, find the members that have disabilities and their families, and start a dialogue with them. This will be your first step. If you look around and you do not see people with disabilities, that is a huge red flag. It means that something is keeping them from coming, and you need to find out what it is. And so I have some more ideas. And so this is what people in the parish can be doing. And parents, if you're able to kind of kickstart things in your parish, these are some ideas that you can use to help kind of guide your parish and say, hey, I have these ideas, let's take these steps. It's great if you approach them with kind of a plan of how to go about making your parish more accessible and more welcoming, rather than just saying, this parish isn't welcoming and accessible, do something about it. So here's some ideas for how to do that. First off, you just have to, gather information from the people with disabilities, enter into a dialogue. Have people been making suggestions in the past that have been ignored? Or are these suggestions not getting forwarded to the right person? Or is there really nobody to kind of collect these kind of suggestions? Have people been calling up the secretary saying, hey, we should really have a ramp in here, or our bathroom doesn't have any grab rails. We really need to change that. And the secretary's like, okay, and doesn't know what to do with it. And it gets filed away, or maybe a note put on father's desk, and that's it. We sort of need a system for collecting these suggestions. National Catholic Partnership on Disability suggests like a parish access forum where you bring everyone together, kind of have a meeting and talk about these things. And that's great. It should be in person. And you don't want to make it part of like a larger parish kind of event, because you don't want the concerns of the non-disabled parishioners to kind of drown out the voice of the parishioners with disabilities. If this is about making your parish more welcoming and inclusive, then you want to, focus on talking to just the people with disabilities. It's so important. I'm always amazed when parishes want to move forward and become inclusive, but they don't actually talk to anybody with disabilities. It's like there's this idea of these are good things we can do for people with disabilities, but like they don't really address the needs of the people in the parish that have disabilities. So you want to make sure that you're dialoguing with them. Or you can send out like a survey, have a survey that parishioners can fill out, either a paper survey or online for people. It's also so helpful to do an actual walkthrough of the parish grounds with a person with disabilities, not just father walks around the parish and makes note of where he thinks things should be. And again, National Catholic Partnership on Disabilities, on their website, they have what's called a LAMB form, LAMB, that really gives you a lot of ideas of what to look for as far as barriers and physical accommodations. So you really want to walk around the parish, the grounds, and the building, all the buildings, any of them, and make a note with the person with disabilities what really needs to change. Before we were really at the parish, there was a curb cut. I'm using air quotes here. It wasn't great. And it went into the handicap parking, but there was a lip of, a good like 4 or 5 inches or more. It wasn't something that my sons could easily navigate in their power chair. And so we said, this isn't actually like a good curb cut ramp handicap type thing. So our church put in a new ramp and more handicap parking. So, but again, up to that point, no one had really said anything, and nobody else was really aware that that was an issue. No one had said anything. No one else noticed it. So yeah, you really want to look at some of these things through the eyes of a person with disabilities. Yeah, so many people think because of ADA, everything's fine now. Most people don't realize the American with Disabilities Act does not apply to churches. And so even in new construction churches, you will often get the absolute bare minimum in accessibility. And that's just so upsetting to me, because where in our faith is the bare minimum ever good? There's nothing, in our church where anyone would ever recommend the absolute bare minimum. So we want to do more. We want to do more than the bare minimum. We should be setting the standard as the Catholic Church. We should be setting the standard for other churches, other buildings, other businesses to follow. Other examples of physical accommodations to look for. Think about seating in Mass. How obvious are your resources for hard of hearing or those with vision impairments? Not just during Mass, what about confession? Seating in your religious ed classrooms, bathroom, parking? What about the holy water font? Can someone with a disability get up to the holy water font? I know in a lot of places, it's not uncommon to, if you have it there, you kind of shove other stuff up next to it. So think about that. Everything, and again, stuff that you wouldn't consider. This is why it's so important to do it with someone who has a disability. What do autistic or intellectually delayed members of your parish need? It might not be the physical accommodations as much as just opportunities to participate. Being an usher, lector, altar server, choir. How often is it assumed that a child can't do something rather than they're given the opportunity to try? One of our wonderful contributors at Accepting the Gift has a son with Down syndrome, and he was not allowed to attend vacation Bible school. Vacation Bible school was not something they thought he could do as a child with Down syndrome. Also, becoming an altar server, he had to wait much longer than anyone else. My friend had to really fight for that. And there's really no reason for that. Yes, he needs training, but all kids need training. He might need a little bit more, but that doesn't mean he can't do it. So this is still going on today. Kids just being denied the opportunity to participate. So something that you can do is just, letting everyone know, maybe through a bulletin announcement, that everyone is welcome. Outbursts are fine, stimming is fine. Letting the parish know that the behavior of the autistic and individuals with intellectual disabilities, it's fine and it's welcome. Are there sensory items that can be available, a sensory room, things like that. And so parents, think about what accommodations would make it easier for your child to participate in all aspects of parish life, not just the mass, everything. You want your child to have full participation. So think about everything. You might need to be the one that takes the initiative to walk the grounds, maybe speak to other parents and get their feedback, and then write up a list of concerns to present directly to your parish priest or like parish council. And this is why it's so helpful then to have had that relationship built up with them. You build that relationship, they get to know you, and then you approach them and say, these are some changes that my family and other families here would like to see made to our parish to make our children more welcome. And you can present them with this concrete list of ideas. Parishes, you're always looking for more volunteers, right? You always need people to step up and do things. Well, what could be done to make it easier for the parents of children with disabilities to volunteer? Is there something they'd like to sign up for? Offer it to them. Offer opportunities to them. You might be thinking, like, the parent might be thinking it's not something they can do, when if you say, no, it's okay if you bring your child or you let your, son with autism, like, come and help you, that's fine. Well, then the parent might be more willing to do that. The parent might be more willing to come and fill in an hour for adoration if they realize they can bring their child along with them who might have some stimming behaviors or might have, like, say, a ventilator that's going to be making noise while they're there for their hour. Let parents know that you can work with them, volunteer opportunities as well. Find out if there's things you can be doing. Religious ed and sacramental prep. This is such a big area that I hear from parents and where some changes need, we'd like to see some more changes. As a parent, we'd like to see some more changes. Kids are being denied the sacraments. I hear that all the time. Kids are being turned out of CCD classes, or kids are being made to wait for years to reach some like magical milestone before being allowed to receive a sacrament. And it's not even like really clear. It's not like a simple, like, well, they have to know that the bread is the, not food. It's not like a very clear guideline like that. It's like something in the ether that will be decided by somebody. It's never quite sure who. It's always like this very random thing that just keeps getting pushed down the road. So that I'm not in favor of that. But so what is your parish doing to prepare children with disabilities for the sacraments? How are your teachers being trained? You might realize as a parent who's looking into this, or as a lay leader, that absolutely no thought is being given to children with disabilities at your parish at all. And that's shocking. So that's something that would have to change. Parents, again, work on building that relationship. So you can be honest when the time comes to prepare your child for the sacraments and religious ed. I had a wonderful conversation with a room of DREs last year who said that they had parents who would not say anything about their child's disabilities, and then problems would come up in class later for which the teachers were completely unprepared. And so that's understandable, because again, if you're a parent and you think your child's going to be denied a sacrament or denied religious education because of their disability, well, of course, you're going to be really scared to say something. So you have to know that you can say something and not be reprimanded for it or punished for it, or your child punished for it. And parishes, you have to, be willing to make accommodations for whatever the parents might be asking for. Parents, you can use your child's IEP or 504 to help ask for specific modifications. And again, in our guide, the free advocacy toolkit that I shared earlier, we have specific advice on approaching your DRE in a sacrament year as well. Um, I think also some of the DREs that I spoke to said that maybe families didn't want their children to be given like a real negative label. So when you send out like a questionnaire or a sign-up form for religious education, watch the language that you're using around disabilities. So when a parent has signed their child up and it's on the form, rather than just saying, does your child have a learning disability? Does your child, have a diagnosis of ADHD or autism, something like that? You put questions, how can we best serve your family? What would make it possible for your child to succeed? Things like that. Parents might be more open to sharing information too that way, if it's not framed in such a negative way and they're afraid the child will get a negative label. I have found that many special needs parents will do whatever is possible to give their child, to make sure their child has a positive classroom experience. We want to work with you. I'm speaking for all special needs parents here, to all the catechists. We will work with you. We want our kids to get religious education. We want the church to be that positive, safe learning space that some of our kids really don't get at school. So some parents may be willing to speak to a group of teachers or students to kind of educate them on things about either their child's diagnosis or just, different accommodations in general. At our own church, we had a mom whose son had certain behaviors that other kids in the class weren't used to. So she just took it upon herself to, send an email, speak to some parents about it. Parents, maybe you'd be willing to be a classroom aide or even teach a class that included your child. Whatever help you're willing to offer as a parent, let your parish know, especially if you're coming to them with a request. Let them know what you're willing to do to help. And parishes ask, like, if you think, well, I think we can do this. Would you be willing to help in this way? Would you be willing to do this? Like, a lot of times we will be willing to do that if it means our child is going to be able to sit in a class with their peers and get religious education. So it can be a really positive collaboration. I think both sides tend to go at it as like a really scary thing, could be very negative, but I think it can be a really wonderful, beautiful thing if people come together with the best of intentions and like really work together to find a good, positive outcome. So, if you've gone, you've listened, you've seen how things are currently at your parish, what maybe you need to change, where's room for improvement and all these different aspects. Obviously, the next step is to take action. For parents, it's time, you got to get your parish on board with these things. You got to work together and you got to hold their feet to the fire, maybe a little bit to get things done. But you can't do that without a plan. So you need some sort of plan. How are you going to address all these concerns that have been brought to the forefront? Write everything down, make sure you have everything written down and recorded, and that everybody at the parish and all these branches are on the same page. The work that you're going to do, it's going to benefit not only the families that have come to you with these concerns, it's going to benefit like generations of people. And special needs parents, we're really great at getting the word out. So if your parish becomes very accessible, you're going to start getting more people in general, because we're going to be all like, our parish is great, they do this, our parish does this, and you're going to start getting more people. So word will get out. And I think so that if you're taking action, the first and the cheapest thing, so cheap, you can always sell this, parents, is just to, teach the members of the parish, volunteers, ushers, everyone, how to interact with disabled people, with parishioners with disabilities. Just put something in the bulletins, just start making it like a more welcoming environment. Mention things from the pulpit, like announcements. And it helps to have, if you're starting this process, NCPD calls it a parish access guide. You need somebody that has to be kind of the point person to coordinate all that. It's great if it is a special needs parent, but please don't dump that responsibility on us if we don't ask for it. It's great if somebody else wants to take that on. You can also see, as you're going forward with things, what are the groups that you already have at your parish and how can they help special needs families? If you have a Knights of Columbus, what can they do? If you have confirmation students that need to get service hours, can they become aides for children with disabilities in younger religious ed classes? How can the people that are already there, the organizations that are already there, how can they already do things? And, again, be interacting more with the parishioners with disabilities and building those relationships. You don't really need to reinvent the wheel for everything. But there needs to be some sort of plan or person in place. So again, as new concerns are coming in, new people are coming in, there's like a point person that knows where to go. You need someone that new families can turn to if they have a concern, if they're struggling, if their child is in the hospital, if they need a meal train. Or again, like it's a sacrament year, they've just come to the parish and they don't know what to do or who to turn to. It's great if you have a point person and a plan in place. Everyone at the administrative level of the church should understand ministering to the unique spiritual needs of Catholics with disabilities and their families. It should be standard, but unfortunately most priests don't get trained in this area. Most staff doesn't get trained in this area. But thankfully, it doesn't cost a lot of money to gain that understanding, just a willingness to work with disabled Catholics and their families. And as parents, if we can build relationships with our staff, our parishes and all the staff, we can help change hearts and minds. And we can make it easier for the larger, more costly and time-consuming accommodations. So we've built that relationship. We brought our concerns to the forefront. We're working on changing hearts and minds. We're seeing what the existing organizations can do. Everybody's getting on board. And then it's the time, okay, well, what bigger things need done? Do we really need a handicap bathroom, like a major renovation? What can we do for that? Do we really need wider doorways here? Are the classrooms really completely inaccessible? What do we need to do? And ideally, everyone gets on board with that then, because, they've had more experience working with more of the parishioners with disabilities. They understand the concerns, they see things. Because remember, it's an investment in souls and not in things. Again, I keep coming back to that. The family that leaves may never come back. And it's not even because they disagree with the church and what she teaches. It's just because they can't participate. Taking action is not about doing things to make people feel special, but to make it possible for them to do what everyone else takes for granted. So again, it's not to do things to make people feel special, but to make it possible for them to do what everyone else takes for granted. You think about the man that had to be lowered through the ceiling to get to Jesus. Everybody else could just walk in the door, but they couldn't get their, these men, they couldn't get their friend in there. They couldn't do that. It shouldn't be up to us as the parents to keep breaking in the ceiling. We'll do it. I'm sometimes to the point where I'm ready to break in a ceiling, but yeah, we just want to be able to walk in the door and greet Jesus like everybody else. Our family's been very lucky. We've got, as I mentioned, better curb cut handicap parking. We've got ramps put into the classroom. I have a good friend whose daughter is nonverbal, has nonverbal autism. She was able to receive all her sacraments. Father figured out a really great way to do a nonverbal confession. It can be done. It can all be done. You just have to keep pushing and working at it and working together. And just like, your parish continually offers things like mass, religious ed, parish events, you're gonna have to continually offer these services to disabled people. You don't just put in one ramp or insist one child with confirmation and then it's like, okay, all done. Even as parents, as my sons get through all the sacraments, it's not like I feel like, well, I don't need to do anything anymore. I'm on the building committee now. I'm working on the bathroom subcommittee to make sure we get an adult changing table. So the work continues. It's an ongoing dialogue. Things are constantly changing. Even with my own kids, things change. What worked one year may not work the next. So you need to have a system in which new concerns can be raised and quickly addressed. Every year, religious ed teachers need to understand inclusion. And every year you need to reevaluate for new physical accommodations or updates, maintenance to older ones. Please keep your elevators maintained, churches. We showed up at a church before, a beautiful church. They got rid of their ramp because it was wooden. and had gotten old and damaged. So they put in an elevator, but they did not maintain the elevator either. And they often kept it locked. So we could not go to mass there. So that it was very frustrating. So maintenance on the things that you put in as well. As new parishioners join, make sure that special needs are addressed on any sign-up form. And, you know, parents, you can look to host a support group at your parish. We have a guide for that as well. And so you can check that out on our shop. You know, keep the parish council and your parishioners updated on whatever accommodations you're being offered. So don't just think, well, you're doing it, you've made this family happy, you know, toot your own horn a little bit, put it in the bulletin, let people know, hey, we now have a FM system. If, you know, you have someone that has a hearing impairment, you know, there might be somebody in your parish who's like, oh, well, you know what, if they've got that FM system, now I can finally bring my daughter, or, oh, maybe my wife will finally come. So whatever you're doing, whatever accommodations, make sure you're putting it out there, let people know. And make sure that on your website, you have contact information for all these things as well. Because that's really, it's going to be the first place people are looking. Parents want to know, well, it's my child's sacrament year. Who do I talk to? What do I do? Have stuff up on the website, you know, have it there and keep it updated. So if the parents email you, that it doesn't get sent to somebody that doesn't work there and hasn't worked there for the last 5 years, which has happened to me. By existing as a welcoming and accessible parish, you more perfectly model Christ to these families in a world that is often anything but accessible. It's so wonderful when you can go to a really truly accessible place after being, you know, turned away from so many other places. You will find that word will get out and more families will come to you. And that shouldn't frighten you. We should recognize that all people, regardless of abilities, have something to offer the church. Because of the support of our parish, I can teach CCD. I can be a classroom aide. My husband organizes our St. Nicholas party every year. The scouting program at our church allowed our sons to participate and you know, just like any other scout. And because our parish supports us, we're able to give back like any other family. And parents, as hard as it may be with everything else on your plates, you know, in many cases, it's up to us to sell this vision to the churches. It's up to us to really get the ball rolling here. And it may seem daunting, but we can do it. And it's going to benefit us and our families, and it's going to benefit so many other families as well. So if you feel called to really step out and push for these things, you know, God's going to give you the grace to do that. And we have the resources through our organization to help and support you as well. So in conclusion, parents and lay leaders need to come together and identify the problems at their parish. You need to make it together, work together, and then work to make those changes. And parents, it's going to be our job to hold the parishes accountable to do what they say they're going to do. And then going forward, we need to have people and systems in place that continue to support disabled Catholics and their families. It should be second nature. It should just be ingrained. A new family shows up that has a child with disabilities, nobody blinks. That family can just integrate into the parish seamlessly without a second thought. So I hope that you have, that's it. I hope you'd enjoyed this talk. I will now go through the chat, see if there's anything here. We have one comment. What is your Facebook group? If you go to our website, acceptingthegift.org, we have links to our Facebook group there. I believe if you search Facebook for just Accepting the Gift group, it should pop right up. Yes, I think if I can quickly pull up the link, I will try to share it in the chat now. But I'm very curious to know what other questions or anything, if there's any parents that have had specific problems or concerns, if I can answer them specifically. Thank you, Margie, for your comment. And there is the link to our Facebook group in the chat then. Please join us. We have over 400 some members. We do online support meetings at least once a month. Our next one is coming up, I believe, next Wednesday. I will have to check my calendar, but if you go in the group, you should see a save the date for it as well. So thank you, everyone. If there's no other questions or comments, I will turn it back to Jessica.
Great, thank you so much. It was really entertaining to listen to all of that. I really appreciate it. So thank you. The next session it's the high school panel, and it is with the Porto Charities link. So if everybody wants to pop over there for the last session, it's Zoom 3. Perfect. Thank you.